So now we come to a dark skin tone. It's a lovely little girl. I'm just going to show you the same area of the face. Starting as usual with a creamy colour. This is Ivory Oxide. Just going over those highlights lightly. You can see just here there's a very narrow highlight on that cheek. Just going to have to be aware of that all the time because it is one of the defining areas of the curve of the cheek. Some highlights in colour pencil we can define at the beginning with embossing techniques. We'll come on to those later when we're talking about eyes and hair. I would avoid them on skin, even for a narrow highlight like that, just because you're never, like I said before, going to need to preserve the white of the paper, and if you put embossing lines in, it alters the structure of the paper. Obviously you're indenting a mark into the paper that's going to be noticeable when you shade over it, so you're going to not be able to shade smoothly between the tones. Bit of brown ochre. Start defining some of these dark areas. And notice that even though we know the tones are going to be darker, I'm still not putting a lot of pressure through the pencil. I'm choosing to build up with layers rather than just going straight in and making the darks dark by pressing on. That's the best way really to avoid getting harsh lines. If you just get into the habit of just working with whatever stroke you're using to shade, but working in light layers, you're going to avoid getting harsh lines, which you just don't want in any area really of portraiture. You want to be thinking of working fuzzy lines and areas that blend. Actually, that little highlight I was talking about before is a very important one, so I'm just taking a lot of care around it. Might not look like much, but it really is helping us define that curve coming into the sphere of the cheek. I'm going to switch to my burnt ochre. Start to bring in some of this colour as a mid-tone. All the time I've been aware that I'm starting to now come into this darker part of the highlight. So I'm just carefully encroaching on it, just zoning in so I don't take too much of it away at a time before I'm sure of where my marks are going to go. And again, it might not be so obvious on such dark skin, but there's just a rosy glow on there which we're going to leave till last to put on. This is enough of a red tone to be working with for now. I'm just going to bring in the purple and put in some of these really dark areas just so we've got a contrast to work from. Interesting that what I was saying before about not using pinks, because a lot of them aren't light fast and they tend to be rogue pigments that disappear. You can actually make up for pink tones by using purple and yellow together, which sounds really surprising, but it does work. I'm just going to use a bit of slate grey in that, around that highlight. What I was saying before about being able to make up colours from any different combinations, I was just looking there to see if I've got like a Van Dyke brown or a sepia, but I've not got one with me, but no worries, because we can always just use other colours to fill in to build it up. I'm just going to put in a bit of more of the yellow tone to give a little bit of radiance on this mid-tone of the skin. Another good tip is when you're working in the darkest areas, if you introduce some of the colours that you're working in the midtones into those dark areas, they stop looking quite so flat and black or grey. You want even your dark areas to be a mix of colour, because that's what they are in nature. If you really look, you'll start to see it. I'm going to introduce a little bit of very light indigo blue, very light. I hardly ever use black in any of my portraits. Very, very rare. I just prefer to make up even black from a mixture of browns and indigo blue and red. Back to purple. Now you can see this highlight's starting to look way too white. Now the colour around it's getting darker. But it's better to leave it that and then go in and put the colour on it than accidentally cover it. So all the time being mindful that it's there. I'm going to go into it with a bit of a peachy colour. Brown ochre again. And we're almost getting to that point where we're ready to leave it. So you can see in this area here it's almost looking a bit too purple, as if it's bruised, but until you got the eye in as a reference you can't really correct those colours in relation to anything because there's nothing there to relate it to. So I would, there again, leave that for now and go in and finish it, correct even the tones in this highlight when I'd got all the other contrasting elements to compare it with. So that's the dark skin tone finish too.